Hi everybody, I'm just some guy and today I'm going to review Mobster Graveyard. This was a requested review by the creators. It's an Antarctic Press book written by David Furr with art by Ryan Cody and Shannon Smith. From the website, detectives Roger Creighton and Dan Cooper are on the biggest case of their career. The two detectives infiltrate Al Capone's most exclusive speakeasy, hoping to find evidence that will bring down the mob once and for all. What they find instead is proof of a supernatural conspiracy and a warehouse full of horror beyond all comprehension. Sounds interesting. I'm sure somebody's done something like this before, but I'm honestly drawing a blank, and that's great because that lets me come to the story without tainting my expectations. As always, I'll start with the art. I like Cody's art style. It's simple but has some really great shapes to it, kind of like Gendy Tartakovsky or Mike Mignola. I think it could use a little more shadow work that would really help sell the style, and it fits with the noir tone of the story. His character designs are cool, everyone's easy to tell apart. What's missing though are expressions. Everyone kinda has the same grimace or smile. Overall it works, but when you get to a scene where the guy is screaming, "Get off me," I'd like to see his mouth open. Cody does this with the monsters, he just doesn't do it with the people. A good expression can really sell a scene very quick. Cody does have good panel flow though. The posing isn't always the best. This is a lesson I learned in college. I call it side-scrolling. Whenever someone's not sure of what to draw or how to draw it or whether they're just playing out the scene, they either draw a dead-on front view or a profile or side shot. There's nothing wrong with this in a technical sense. All the info is there. It's just not very dynamic. Whenever I see shots like this one, I just want to move the camera to a 3/4 view. Maybe move it up or down. Just change the angle to anything but a direct or profile shot. It makes it much more interesting. That said, you can follow the story just by looking at the pictures, and that's great. Now, there are some technical issues that stood out. One was this panel where we're just losing the ceiling. In the previous panels, the ceiling was fairly low, and then it's suddenly really high. I'm guessing this is so we can see the guy's face, but you might want to black out all that extra wall above the doors. It's like extra forehead. Put some bangs over that. The other one was on the next page, where the perspective is just wonky. The drums in the foreground are fine, but the ones in the midground should basically appear eye level. Instead, they're following the same perspective as the foreground drums, including us being able to see the tops of them, but from the positioning we shouldn't be able to see the tops at all. That's something to keep an eye on. It's not a deal breaker, but with everything else being solid, it's a weird mistake. I do want to talk about the colors too, which were done by Shannon and Jerry Lou Smith. I really like the colors for this. I'm a sucker for sienna tone, but also the subtle use of blues and greens. All the other colors are subdued, but we get these distinct pops of blue and green that draw the eye, and it's really cool. As for the story, I enjoyed it. I was a little confused at the beginning. It starts with a guy on the Civil War battlefield getting up and walking into a 1920s style car, and it's just jarring because you're thinking you're in the 1800s and then you're in a memorial monument, but the guy's just lying in the battlefield. So has he been there this whole time? Did he just appear? Is he time traveling? Why didn't anybody notice he was there? I don't know, and it's not really clear at the end of the issue what's going on with this dude other than the fact that when he dies, he reappears at Vicksburg National Military Park. The story then shifts to two Chicago cops infiltrating an Al Capone speakeasy. This is where the story lost me some because it turns into a cop drama with tons of banter. And I mean, we've got Claremont level banter here. It's not bad, it's written well actually. It's just so much dialogue that ultimately doesn't tell us anything about the story at hand. It's all about Al Capone's network. And yeah, that explains how the speakeasies exist, but it doesn't help us get into the monster story promised in the cover. And it goes on for half the book. I wasn't bored, but I know where it's going, and I'm like, can we get there? It's just too wordy with stuff we don't need. The gist is that the two cops are kind of being played by the guy who got them into the speakeasy, but they already suspected that and are just going along with it to try to bust Al Capone. So I immediately assumed that since this is a monster story, everyone in the room is a monster. They're all posing as normal and the cops' hookup is totally ignorant of this. So when the cops follow the city controller to the back room, I know we're going to get the big reveal. We get some more banter about the prices of the drums, which is fine, and then the cops reveal themselves and miraculously don't get killed immediately. They want to ask questions, but instead decide to open up one of the drums and out pops an arm. And the city controller's like, alright, I've had enough of this. And they monster up and go after the cops. Then that guy from the Civil War pops up to kind of not actually save the day. He totally gets killed, but I'm confused about how and why he's there. We see him in the main hall smoking when the two cops arrive, and we see him in the hallway when the cops go into the back room. But how did he get to the speakeasy? How does he know he needs to be there? What's his connection? We're missing that. This is where you could use some of those banter pages to have some dialogue between the cops and this guy so he can at least throw them a little info about his job and what he does. Instead, when he's asked to explain what's going on, he's like, there's no time for explanations. Maybe not for the cops, but for us, we need a little something. Just what is going on? Who are you? What's your deal? We get a little bit of that in the wrap-up. The cop that survives ends up at Michael Reese Hospital. Side note, that's where I was born. And he gets told that basically his report is going to be scrubbed because it sounds ridiculous and there's no evidence of any monsters. When he asks about the mystery man named Hollister, there's no evidence he was even there. So clearly there's a cleanup crew, either for the monsters, for Hollister, or for both. Then we see Hollister wake up again at Vicksburg National Military Park, and we get just a taste of info about him. We find out that he might not have a choice in his current profession. Either this is a price he pays for continuing to live, or there's some other catch. That's interesting. I'd like to know more about it, but I wish that was in this book rather than the next. Overall, I think this is an okay start. I want to keep reading, which is a good sign, but I think the clever side story went off on too much of a tangent. We got too much information about Chicago in the late 1920s and not enough about the monster dynamic of the world. The sooner things went bad for the cops and the surviving cop met with Hollister, the better. That's where the meat of the story seems to be, so you want to get to that fast. But overall, this is an okay start. If you got the extra $3.99, you might want to check it out. Maybe wait for the second issue to come out and get them both at the same time so you can get a fuller story. I'm looking forward to see where it goes. If you read the book, let me know what you thought about it in the comments below. Thanks for listening.